Bam! The bait of the day. Bomber Original Crankbait. These are the plastic ones, not the wooden ones. We're going to talk about this. Are you ready to run and gun? It's time for blast off. Let's go. Hey guys, Todd here with you. Welcome back to Bassin 101. An oldie but a goodie. The Bomber Original Crankbait. Now, originally they were made of wood out of cedar. And by the 1960s, they were turned into plastic with just a single rattle in them. There has never been a counterweight in these baits. Just a aluminum, an 040 thickness aluminum bill with just a 2 hook keepers, and there you go. Has no ballast in it whatsoever except for that aluminum bill with the steel line tie on it. And I would suggest keeping that line tie on there. Don't use a snap. Tie directly to that. I like these baits. Now granted, they run backwards. So basically crawfish is what you're looking at. I do have some shad, but they're more of a chrome with a green, and to me that just kind of, you're going to fish this a little faster anyway. Just gives them a shad type of deal. Actually, this is one of the few plastic ones that don't rattle. So this is great for bright days and you want to cause a lot of reflection. And what's cool about these is they run in the water just like this, right about this angle right here, and they will pop right back up. And because of that, the way this bill is designed, they're almost weedless. They really are. This one still has the factory hooks on it, which you can see there's limited movement to what those hooks can do compared to once you add split rings, they just go all over the place. Now, as far as models go, I like the 400, 500, and 600. The reason is they float. You start going to 300s, some float, some don't, down, and they will sink. So if you want to keep them on the bottom, they're still fairly weedless to a point if you modify the hooks. These are a little long, and I prefer a shorter shank KVD type hook with a split ring. That's the only modification I do to these. Just some kind of a split ring. Had a little rubber band on there. Little split ring. And it allows these hooks to just go all over the place. And they're still fairly weedless. I can still throw these things anywhere I want. Just put some split rings and short shank hooks on there, because this is how it originally comes with no split rings. And you can see the hooks will lock in place. So that just gives the bass a bit of a crowbar effect where they can actually come off of these things. Again, like I said, I use a 4, 5, and 600 models. This is a 400, which is a 400. This is 600, which is a 4-inch model. This is a 500, which is about a 3 3/4. And this is a 400, which is about 3 1/4 inches. And if you put all these together, you can kind of see the different sizes. Maybe I can do this with the bills. You know how I am about hooking myself. So if I run these all side by side, the bills, you can see the different sizes. Now, just like a fire tiger. I got that in a big 400 size, or 600 size. Is that, to me, is that deep water? Nah, you throw that sucker right there in the big old log jams, shallow water, and just worm that thing through the cover. Because it's got a nice little noise to it. This is the old ABS plastic. This is a little bit louder. This one and this one are probably around the 80s, early to mid 80s, where this one here is more probably late 70s, which is why it has that sound compared to the 80s. Still same kind of plastic to a point. Same kind of molds. I don't know why they offered some of these without rattles, but I like that. Very, very, very hard to find. But again, like I said, a 300, I mean not 300, I'm sorry, I think 3-inch 300, a 400, 500, and 600. These dudes right here are just, people don't realize how deadly these baits are. And they're completely forgotten about, no longer made, but you can definitely find your share on eBay. They are out there, folks, so you can find them. Some you're going to pay for, some you're not. Some are hard to find, such as like this green crawdad, this old Coast Dog green craw. Very hard to find. You can kind of find the browns and oranges pretty good on there. And there's also the lifelike patterns too, which I have back here. Right here. Here is a brown craw naturalistic pattern, which they started making these around 1980, 81. But a great pattern. If you really want to stay realistic in clear water, that's one way to do it. I just kind of like the old Coast Dogs just because it's just what I grew up throwing. Was the old Coast Dog style. And it's the same spray pattern. They just put a different printing on it. This is stenciled. This is printed. But it's the exact same color combination. No difference. Now, if you want a sinker type model, that's when you go to the slightly smaller version. Again, this is a dark green craw with a printed pattern on it. It may look the same as the other 300, but technically this is a thicker bodied lure than this one. This one is almost neutrally buoyant. Buoyant. It floats a lot slower compared to that one, which pops up. This one will almost sit in place. Not quite as weedless as the older style like this. But that's just something you got to experiment with. Once you get down to the 400/300 kind of category, you're going to have to really pay attention. Most of your 400s will float. And you can kind of go by the sound of the rattle. More of a knock. This is going to float a lot slower than that because this has a bigger bearing in it. It's also thicker plastic than that. Okay, so this is going to float slower, almost sink, compared to the one floating in that one. Now, this is in the 400/300 model. Then again, like I said, you've got the hung up. You got the 400, the 500s and the 600s, 3 3/4, 4-inch. Like I said, guys, I don't want to make this too long. This is just a simple, bomber type deal. You can use them in clear water, muddy water. This is a really good complement to a spinnerbait. If you're throwing in brush piles and 5-6 foot of water and you bring a spinnerbait through them, you can also bring that through it and just bump the stump like crazy. And you can catch bass doing this. Check on old school fishing videos on YouTube and look up Tommy Martin's crankbaits. He's throwing a Tennessee shad, that big, I think it's the 600 if I'm not mistaken. It might even be a 500. But one of the two biggest sizes of that right there in a Tennessee shad. And he actually catches several bass on that video. Back in the jams, man. Way back in the brush piles. Floating floating brush, stuff like that. It's a great lure to throw. Tackle, it depends on your choice of fishing. For standard fishing, use a regular cranking rod. Your cranking rod of choice. We like fiberglass, graphite, doesn't matter. Short handle, long handle, doesn't matter what you like to throw. Fluorocarbon, braid, monofilament. It's your choice. Everybody fishes a bait differently. I fish a crankbait different than you do. Not better, but different than you do. Okay? You fish a crankbait different than I do. So your choice of lines, your choice of rods, everything's going to change. If you're going to start throwing this stuff right here in the back of a lot of cover, you may want to go to a medium heavy rod and 14, 17 pound test. That's something to think about too. It's where you fish, where you want to fish. I'm telling you guys, I know a lot of you are into the new stuff, the Mega Bass and the Azuri and all that kind of stuff. I'm telling you, man, these old baits like this, it was the very first true deep running crankbait besides the water dogs. These were actually a little more controllable than the water dogs. And the hellbenders came right about the same time as these as well. But they were known as trolling baits. They were better suited for trolling. These were better suited for casting and cranking. So that's why they have a slightly different lip design and why they bounce off the cover. They'll actually roll off cover as they come through it. But don't burn it. Worm it through it. Worm it, reel in your slack, let that thing come up a little bit, reel it back through, let it come up a little bit. That's the beauty of these lures. That's what makes them so great. And they are so long forgotten. And as far as I'm concerned, that's fine with me, because while you guys are throwing the other crankbaits that run to death, that are by the new companies that everybody else is throwing too, how many guys throw these? I bet you can count on one hand how many guys probably in the state that I live in still throw these things. Because nobody thinks about them anymore. And those that have them, all those old baits, I'll just take those to Goodwill. They won't catch fish today. Yeah, they will. They'll still catch as many fish a day as they did the other day. I don't care what Randy Blockett tells you. They will still catch as many fish a day as they did back in the old days. That's all I got, guys. So until next time, may the Father bless you and keep you in Yeshua's name. And as always, fish on.